The next Lee and Ian podcast is approaching the station. Please step aside.
And welcome to the Lee and Ian Show. I'm Lee Navlin.
And I'm Ian Grodman, back from working, Lee.
Thanks for returning to the Lee
I'm very
and
happy to
Ian
be here.
Show. Ian, now the Lee and Ian Show is, of course, sponsored by Grodman Law and Mediation. Remember, when it comes to divorce, family first, your children first. Mediation is the way to go. Grodman Law and Mediation.
Thank you, Lee. I hear they're pretty good.
Yeah, well, I hear they're the best. They're the best.
You.
He's the best.
Thank you.
Anyway, and you know who else is really good? Lee Navlin.
Oh, Lee Navlin's amazing.
And you can check out his books at LeeNavlinBooks.com.
That first book was amazing. A really fun, entertaining read. You could read it in like one day, and I can't wait for the second one.
Well, the second one is out on Kindle, so you could actually download it. But if you want to get a hard copy, it's in pre-sale. So it's up to you. You know?
Okay.
Yeah, I don't know. Your eyesight, you
buying
can
it.
handle the Kindle.
Well,
I don't know.
My eyesight is like not what it used to
So
be.
anyway, so we're going to have some hard copy books out soon enough, but that's LeeNavlinBooks.com. So
I got it.
So, Ian, we have a guest in studio.
Yes, we do.
This is an amazing guest. I would
It's an
like for
amazing
you
guest.
to introduce this wonderful guest.
Thank you. I would love to do that. So this is a young man who I just spoke with last week when he announced that he was going to be running for Congress in the 11th District in the state of New Jersey. We now have 14 people who have declared that they're seeking the Democratic nomination. Zach Beecher, who is with us today, has not been involved in politics as much as some of the other people who are involved, right, which can be a good thing. But he's got an incredibly impressive background, an Army paratrooper, continues to serve in the military, in the reserves, went to Princeton, went to Cambridge University in England. He is a venture capitalist. His military training has really colored his perspective on the world. He's a great Democrat, and he's got some great things to say, and we're very welcome to welcome him. We're very happy to welcome him to the
Zach,
podcast.
thank you very much for coming down to the podcast.
Lee and Ian, it's great to be with you guys today. Thanks again for the opportunity to be down here.
Now, the weather I know was a little dicey. It took Zach quite some time to get here from Morristown. He came from Morristown to Maplewood.
Who knew? 90 minutes from Morristown,
a
right?
12-mile ride,
Best
90
old
minutes.
journey in town.
So when elected to
Yep.
Congress, we're going to do something about this traffic situation, right?
Transportation's right at the top of the agenda, Jess.
There we go. He's all about the infrastructure.
That's what I've been telling Ian. I said, we got to do something about that Route 24, Route 78, and Zach's already on that.
Yeah.
So Zach, I want to, we're going to do the elevator pitch in a moment, kind of talk to the audience and tell them why they should vote for you. But before we get to that, just a little bit about your background. Now, you were raised in Randolph, New Jersey. From the time you were a little kid, you wanted to serve your country. That was something that was, I assume it sounds like you got that from your parents.
100%. I mean, when you look at my background, I was blessed with two parents who service was right at the center of who they are. My dad was a police officer for 36 and a half years, retired as a chief of police out of Mount Olive, actually started his career as a social worker where he met my mother, who's the real force of nature in the family. She's a social worker with DIFUS, working with kids.
Fantastic.
In 1994, just after my brother arrived, she founded her own nonprofit. Almost called it a startup. Really is a startup, and all oriented towards serving families across North Jersey. They've grown from 3 social workers in 94 to almost 60 today. They're about to open their third office in Passaic in January. We're just thrilled.
What's it called? Can you say?
Center for Evaluation and Counseling. So it's focused on supporting families that are navigating abuse, trauma, and different difficulties.
Very
but
important.
you can imagine the dining room table was a pretty interesting place for conversation. It was always oriented towards, hey, how do we navigate these different challenges for families just like ours? How do we think about the ways that we can offer solutions? How can we offer that helping hand? And when you grow up like that, when you see that, for me, I had grandparents who were Marines. I had a grandmother who was an immigrant from Ireland. You see that community and the way that it delivers. And something about that puts a real boot in you, and you get out there and you know that you want to get out there to solve people's problems.
Can I ask where your grandmother was from in Ireland?
She's from Malin Head. So Malin Head's the northernmost point in the Republic.
Is it in Cavan?
So it's in Donegal, and it's so otherworldly that Star
Donegal's
Wars,
beautiful.
It is.
Yeah.
Star Wars filmed one of its outside planets up there on the shores of Malin Head, which was pretty neat. That's their little fun fact.
Very cool.
Very cool indeed.
Sorry, Lee.
no,
I get distracted easily.
You're a
know
Star
that.
Wars fan, right, Ian? Right.
Well,
So but now you know.
humming,
Next time.
humming.
I always thought you looked the type.
I look the type, yeah.
Right. So you go to Princeton University on an was it an ROT scholarship? Is that?
Yeah,
ROTC.
so I went there on an ROTC
ROTC.
scholarship,
Yep.
and I like to say every admissions counselor has a bad day. I was lucky enough that one had one with me, and I was able to sneak my way in there. And as a kid,
modest guy too.
as a kid of a cop and a social worker, right? You're not thinking about,
Right.
hey, Princeton University, it's right
Right.
down the street. But I'll tell you, like everything, like any good Irish kid, there's always a good story to go with it. So
Mhm.
thanks to a couple blizzards, a couple canceled interviews, and one man who said, hey, I see potential in this kid, I thought twice about whether or not I had an opportunity there. And he was willing to open the office on a snowy day when all the other schools across the state were closed. And I wasn't even thinking about applying to Princeton. And at the end of the interview,
Wow.
he said, hey, you want to give this a shot? So it shows you what mentorship can do, how it can change
Yeah.
the direction of a life. But for
That's
me,
important.
Princeton was amazing, an opportunity to focus on policy and, again, get at understanding the nature of those big problems that I was
Mhm.
interested in helping solve. So I commissioned right out of there into the U.S. Army. They gave me a good long summer holiday, raised the
Yep.
right hand on June 4th. Just a few days later, I was shipping down to Virginia for my first duty
Wow.
assignment. So
And
No
then you-
time off.
And then you became a proud Ranger, a qualified paratrooper, 82nd Airborne.
I did. Turns out you can get over a fear of heights, which is quite a way to do it. I wouldn't recommend it, but I think you
Jumping
learn
out of an airplane, I guess.
what, so maybe-
that'll defeat the problem.
Well,
I
I'll tell you,
assume, once you're
Maybe
successful.
Zach, talk a little bit about what paratroopers do, right? Because I don't really know what a paratrooper does. So I'm kind of curious. What does a paratrooper do?
So they're really America's vanguard in terms of being able to put themselves in difficult situations, literally fall from aircraft in denied environments, so places where our adversaries don't want us to be,
Mm-hmm.
and be able to establish really a beachhead to push security
Wow.
out and begin to conduct those operations. So what does that look like? It looks like you've got 64 paratroopers in the back of an aircraft. You've got every shade, every background, every orientation of American that you could imagine. But they're absolutely united in their shared purpose. And when you think about what is the best of America, it's in those C-130s, in those C-17s above drop zones, training for that moment we hope never comes,
Mm-hmm.
but absolutely united in that understanding that if we can unite in that purpose, that we can be determined in the outcome, that we can exit that aircraft. And even though a few of us might have that fear of heights, myself
Mhm.
included,
Mm-hmm.
even at 800 feet, exiting at over 180 knots, you have that moment where you know that the folks to your left, to your right, are
Right.
going to meet you on that drop zone, and you're going to be able to confront whatever challenges ahead of you.
Yeah.
And I think about it all the time. I think about it as really one of my favorite examples of when Americans really confront the challenges and see their shared opportunity to work together and find strength in those differences, you can tackle any challenge ahead of you.
Mm-hmm. That's great.
Now, Mikey Sherrill, question for you. If you were at a football game, Army-Navy football game, she's Navy, you're Army, would you sit next to her at that game?
Listen, me and the governor-elect see eye to eye on a lot of things, and we're cut of, I think, very similar cloth. But I'll tell you, it's a little hard,
you are,
a
yeah.
little bit hard to see her fan of a particular football team, you know?
Uh-huh.
We've got the Army-Navy game coming up here at the beginning of December. It's going to be a little tough to see eye to eye on that big game.
I bet it is.
But,
Yep.
but I think the always key thing here, too, is that the governor-elect, I think, was a little sharper there in being able to fly the plane. I think I was a little bit more bullish, or we'll see, who knows what, to fall out of the perfectly good aircraft. So
there we go. Yep.
we'll see which gumption takes us to victory on Army-Navy game.
good.
You know?
Mikey's
Good.
goal is to land in the aircraft that she took off on.
It's
right?
a much
jumping out.
it's a much smarter approach, to be fair. But I think one of my favorite anecdotes from how the Army throws you into these situations that are just hard to describe. Right, we're down in Columbus, Georgia. We're at airborne school, and I remember turning to this kid who was from Macon, Georgia, and I said, "Hey, man, you look pretty nervous. Is this your first time in an aircraft? It's our first jump."
Yeah.
He goes, "Yes, sir, it actually is." And
Ouch.
So the Army will put you in unique situations. So it's
First time in and you're jumping out.
and exactly, I did not envy him in that moment. But kid made it through. He's a paratrooper now. He's a great soldier. But it does, again, like it shows you that you can be confronted with these circumstances, these odds, these paths to victory where you think, how are we going to do it? Well, actually, if you have the right determination, you think about it, you talk about it, you understand the problem at the heart of it, you apply yourself to it, you can overcome it.
Now, you were in Iraq, and I assume there was...
2 tours, right?
So I just did one tour in Iraq.
Okay.
I was deployed. My mother loved this, the day after Christmas, 2016.
Oh, God.
But we were part of a critical mission. I mean, we were there with our Iraqi counterparts to help push on western portion of Mosul, or the old city, to help liberate a city of 1.8 million Iraqis that were living under occupation from ISIS under horrific, barbarous conditions. And we had the privilege of working right alongside our Iraqi counterparts, shoulder to shoulder, to help clear that city and set the conditions for the Iraqi people to be able to live freely. And, I think I learned a lot about, again, we talked a lot about how teams come together. You can figure out different ways in which you can add value, and the ways that you can accomplish the mission, even when you think it's almost insurmountable.
Yeah.
I'll tell you, the scope, the scale of the challenge of ISIS in 2016, 2017, they'd really reached their epoch, the top of their game in 2014, if you could call it that. And we had pushed them back pretty effectively, but they had still really dug in Mosul. And so our Iraqi counterparts really faced a really pernicious, deep, cutting challenge. And we knew that we needed to be able to help them save Iraqi lives. We knew we needed to be able to help move at the speed of their need. And we had to be able to innovate fundamentally at the speed of battle. And so working directly hand in hand, we were able to really take a look at the problems they faced. And you can imagine with equipment, with these types of problems, you get a lot of square peg, round hole dynamics, right? Hey, this thing we thought was going to work, well, it's not working. Or your adversary changed their tactic, and how do you adjust? Well, it's like a football game. It's a football game with real costs, but you got to innovate on the fly in order to drive the outcomes you want. And so, working with American personnel, British personnel, different NATO personnel to think, hey, could we order a small drone off the shelf through Amazon? Could we use that to deliver medical aid? Hey, can we save lives by thinking about ways in which we can weld steel onto the side of these vehicles? These were all ways that we were able to save Iraqi lives, keep the mission moving forward, and then ultimately liberate that city in July 2017. It was a real extraordinary privilege of my life to be able to be part of that.
That's great.
Now, I do know one of the reasons that you want to get into Congress is Donald Trump in the White House. You're very, like many of us, very frustrated, horrified by some of the things he's doing. Now, you were in the Army when Trump became president.
I'll never forget it, actually. So inauguration day is my birthday.
Wow.
And so...
Birthday.
It was quite the birthday. So I'm sat there in Iraq, and I remember watching in an office. They had this old, like 1990s big, deep, tube television, and watching and remember thinking, my God, if he's inaugurated and something happens to me or something happens to one of my soldiers or troopers over here, we're going to get a letter from him.
Yeah,
right.
They're going to be met at Dover Air Base if he shows up by him.
Yeah.
And when you think about what's the most awesome, and in the true definition, awesome responsibility of our government, it's to keep our people safe.
Yep.
And I think it was then at the time that I think I first really was confronted with the contrast of who we had seen in that office before. And now, when you have a son, I had my son on Veterans Day, something about holidays and birthdays in my family.
God is picking these days for you.
There's a quick thread. He's helping my memory is actually what he's doing. So, but my son arrived on Veterans Day in 24, and I think it was such a jarring moment because it was just a few days after he had won again. And in a lot of ways, it brought all those feelings flooding back. And then to watch the inauguration, and then to see the onslaught, the assault on the senses begin again, and on the most vulnerable, and on Americans' wallets, and on our sense of who we are and who owns an opportunity to get the American dream, that was challenged all over again, and at speed, at scale, in a way that really seemed completely overwhelming at the time. And, I think my grandmother, who was always a pretty straight talker, said you could complain, but who would listen?
Right.
Or you could get to work.
And do something about it.
And you could do something about it. And I think we talk a lot about having a bias for action. Now, that's something that I learned in the military. It's something I took into my nonprofit and business career. At the end of the day, a good plan executed today is better than a perfect plan executed tomorrow. Because if you can get the wheels moving on progress, then you can build confidence. And if you can build confidence, you can build a movement. And if you can build a movement, you can tackle any challenge in front of you.
Very good.
So I do get the feeling when you were watching the inauguration in Iraq, to quote George Bush, I believe he said it to Hillary Clinton. He said, listening to Donald Trump speak at the inauguration, that's some weird shit. I get the feeling.
I mean, I'll tell you,
that's what you were hearing.
I remember
as an enlisted
thinking,
man.
I remember thinking, Adlai Stevenson from the '60s. He's got this great quote. He said, that's the problem and the opportunity in America. Anyone can be president.
That's true. Right.
Yeah. Now, I want to go back to the elevator pitch in a moment, but before I do that, I want your opponents to know, I want everyone to know, you're a serious candidate. Moments after you announced that you were running,
yes,
you raised $225,000 in 36 hours. $225,000. You're a serious candidate. People appreciate what you're doing. Obviously, the wheels are turning. But tell us, why do you want to be in Congress, and what would that mean for New Jersey once you're elected?
I grew up here. We started with that, right?
Yep.
These are my family. These are my friends. These are my neighbors. The challenges that working families face in New Jersey here are the same family challenges that my family faces. And when I think about, going back to that idea of, can you despair or can you do? I've always been someone to do something about it. And I think Americans have been pretty clear that they want new voices, new ideas, and new paths in the arena, so that they can be progressively principled but pragmatically minded in the way to build outcomes and results, not more rhetoric, but results. And I think you've seen that right here in New Jersey. Governor-elect Sherrill has led, again, the vanguard on this with a grassroots movement that was built into a groundswell that created the conditions that we're seeing. And it shows the power of that voice. Senator Kim continued that and getting elected and pushing back on the line, making sure that the voters have that choice. And I think the voters made that abundantly clear again on November 4th with a 14-point victory to Governor-elect Sherrill.
Tremendous,
right? And you think about that and you see that the voter wants these new voices in the arena. And I think we see ourselves as very much continuing that work and being able to deliver that results orientation.
Very good.
So you left the Army as a captain, but you're in the Army Reserve, and now you're a major.
I am, for my sins, you could say, back up to the staff officer days. So,
but you've moved into the private sector, venture capital. You've done quite well for yourself there. Talk a little bit about what you've been doing in that field.
So I went to graduate school, right? And I was really interested in this dynamic of how do you keep solving these big problems, right? And so in a lot of ways, I felt I had kind of gotten the exposure in the national security world, and what were the ways that I could take that speed, I could take that team building, and I could take that focus on integrating technology, talent, problem, context in a way that you could drive real solutions, right? That all sounds good, but what does it mean when the rubber meets the road? We have a lot of great technology companies, new companies, small businesses that are focused on these big problems. But you got to make sure that you're tailoring that solution. You're thinking about how it fits to the problem at hand. And so I've been able to do work from helping Princess Eugenie and Buckingham Palace think about tackling human trafficking with technology.
Wow.
We've trained veterans with SAP NS2, both UK and US, to place into cybersecurity jobs. I got the privilege of going to into the healthcare innovation space in order to be a rock in the shoe of providers to make sure that we could think outside the box and deliver care and actually do it at the point of need. So whether that was working with lower income communities to make sure that they knew what the benefits that they had were, that they could sign up, that they could receive them, and we could meet them in the communities in which they were living. And at the same time, also support telemedicine so that we could reach rural communities by standing up net new businesses. When I moved over to an initiative called America's Frontier Fund, we were all focused on how do you actually bring out the full innovation potential, right? And that, again, sounds like a big buzzword, but what does it mean? We hear these things like lithium, we hear these things like semiconductors and solar and green energy. How do you actually build the economy, draw the new talent, train, and provide that opportunity so it doesn't feel like it's across this valley, but it feels available, it feels ready, and it feels like you have a path to a fulfilling future a high-paying job, and a great opportunity that enables you to support your family and climb that ladder.
Mm-hmm.
Every American deserves that opportunity. And so when we've worked with small businesses, we've thought about not only how do you put the product to the market and think about how it grows into the problem to be a solution, but how do you bring the people, the community with you so that there's an opportunity to drive all those pieces together. And so whether it was working here with the New Jersey Economic Development Administration to support the Nokia Bell Labs 2.0, which we launched as a strategic innovation center about 2 years ago, we're thrilled to see the progress there in New Brunswick, or whether it was advising the governor's office in Nevada on how do you actually plug into the green economy? We've got all this lithium. How do I make sure that this doesn't become extractive, but it becomes a backbone where folks can find good union paying jobs in order to plug into America's future? And so, when I think about doing well, I think about doing good.
Mhm.
That's actually the piece that's always mattered to me. That's the piece that's been at the center, I think, of who I am and who I've tried to be through my whole career.
So I know my wife, if I had gone to Princeton and then decided I was going to serve in the Army, and then I'm in Iraq and I'm jumping out of airplanes and I survive, thank God. And then I get a great job in the private sector and I'm doing well, and I have a 1-year-old, as you do. What does Michelle, your wife, think about your decision to run for Congress? Is she like, what now? As I know, my wife would be absolutely not happening. So what's the family dynamic?
Well, my wife's a saint, and I think every man should try to marry out of their league. And I
did too. Yes.
I have been very fortunate to have successfully done that. And Michelle is a true partner and really just the most extraordinary woman. And at the heart of that, as a partner, you got to know each other. And Michelle and I, we talk about these problems around our kitchen table the same way that any family does.
Yep.
And we think about the future that we're going to be able to hand to Pierce, our son.
Mm-hmm.
When I was growing up and when Michelle was growing up, we were both public school kids. We both knew that you could trust your neighbors, your family, your friends, and that there was this idea that the American dream was something achievable, but something tangible and something that if I had something and I needed it, my neighbors could look out after me. I think what's been also depressing about this MAGA movement is that there's actually this kind of hollowness at its core in terms of this zero-sum game.
So.
Right? There's an anger, and I understand people are angry and they're bitter and they're sick and tired of being sick and tired. I get it. But I think the MAGA movement goes a step further, and this is the real problem, is that they believe that life is this zero-sum game, that if you take a piece from my pie, Ian, and I take a piece from Lee,
I'm losing.
We're losing.
Right.
And we're all kind of fighting over the same slice.
Yep.
And if I can't get a scoop of the cherry, then it's all bad and it's all good, or it's all bad and nothing's progressing. I think the way that we want is to get back on track to think that we are our best hope.
Yeah.
And I want Pierce to grow up in a community where he understands that he can be who he wants to be, he can love who he wants to love, and he can build the life that he's going to be proud of. And I think when people have the opportunity to do that, we actually can build a more fulfilling community. We can build a community that looks out after each other. And it's a little bit like we remember, but at the same time, it's all that much better.
Right.
How did you and Michelle meet? Curious, because
so we are
you're a busy guy.
We are a fully modern couple, and we met on Bumble.
Okay.
And I was working quite a bit at the time. You hit the nail on the head there, Leah. I was a little bit busy, and I'll never forget. Michelle will be horrified that I'm telling this story. But I'd been working too much, and we've been chatting, and she goes, "Hey, listen, seem like a nice guy. I actually am not looking for a pen pal. So we're either going to meet up for a date, or I hope you have a good rest of your life." And I was like, okay, this is a woman who knows exactly what she wants. And I was in love right from that moment.
Well,
so
being a major in the Army yourself, I mean, you're used to
all over the world.
Giving commands and getting commands, and that was a command.
Well, and I think, I think it was an invitation of, being serious about life means being deliberate and decisive about the things that you want. And Michelle's taught me a lot about being true to yourself and always taking the time to be there for those that you love.
There you go. Very important.
So we're going to take a quick break, but before we do that, I just want Michelle to know if you're not happy with some of the things that were said. My son actually is a producer and he edits this podcast. He could chop
He
it
can
out.
make some changes for you if
Right
you
now,
want,
the reason
Michelle.
I mentioned his name is his name's Eli. His middle name is Pierce.
Oh, good man.
so
Good
perhaps
man.
some
See,
good-
I didn't know that.
Right, some good,
Our sons are friends.
Oh,
right,
okay.
yeah.
I see the threads drawing
That's
stronger.
right.
There
There
That's
we go.
right.
Yeah,
Yeah,
This is
yeah.
good. This is good.
There's a reason for all this.
Yep.
So we're going to take a quick break, and we'll be back in just 1 second.
I don't vote. It's just so confusing. I go into the booth, pull the curtain, and count to 10. Then I come out, yell, "Democracy!" and run to my car.
And we're back. The Lee and Ian Show has returned from our break. Ian, did you enjoy your sabbatical?
I feel so much better.
All
Thank
right.
you.
Yes, that's me too. So again, Zach, thank you very much for coming in. Let's talk about what you want to accomplish, what you plan to accomplish when elected.
Yeah, one thing I just want to point out from reading about, everything that you're doing and everything that you're working towards. One of the things that, and you brought it up a little bit earlier in the podcast, you talk about innovation at the speed of battle. Like it's a really interesting way to talk about that. And I'm drawn to that. And I imagine that is a big part of how you are going to be approaching problems, right? Because you talk about being a problem solver and, Lee, go ahead. Sorry, I had to jump in there.
Yeah, I'm a problem solver too. Yeah, but I'm
You're
not
a problem
I'm
maker.
a problem creator.
Yes,
That's right.
yes.
That's right. But Zach, you will be a problem solver in Washington. And what problems do you plan to solve?
Well, I mean, I think, first of all, when you get started in trying to think about, hey, can you earn the title representative?
Mm-hmm.
And it's a trust and confidence dynamic, right?
Mhm.
At the end of the day, this is about the voter's choice, about who they think can ultimately represent and focus on the problems and bring the results that they deserve. And as we went around the district, as I talked to my neighbors and my family and my friends and my new friends on the street and in sports games and you name it, the overarching feeling is folks are, I said it before, but I keep coming back to it, is that they're sick and tired of being sick and tired.
Mm-hmm.
There's a bitterness around where they feel politics is moving. They feel, we've got Thanksgiving coming up here, and it's always been an open joke about the Thanksgiving dining room debates,
Yep.
but I think there's a sharp contrast and contour to those now that, those elbows are a little sharper than we remember.
Oh,
And
Mediators get very busy at Thanksgiving.
and I think, there's that dynamic that comes to play that is almost shocking. And I think folks want to get back to a place where the rhetoric can be cooled off and the results can be what we talk about. And I think Governor-elect Sherrill's brought just an extraordinary team, both down to Trenton, but coming out of NJ11 that was focused on radical competence,
Mm-hmm.
right? You think about some of the leaders that were on that team, they were driving results for their constituents, for their neighbors, for their families, for their friends. And I think the number one thing that I've heard is that people feel the system's not working for them, and that's a problem.
Right.
And Ian, when I think about innovation at the speed of battle, I really think about innovation at the speed of need.
Mm-hmm.
And folks need a government that's accountable to them. They need a government that works on their behalf, and they
Right.
need a government that delivers for
Yeah.
them. And when you talk to any working family in this district, any family in this state, any family across this country, the affordability is right at the front of their minds. These are issues that are palpable, that you can touch, that you can feel. You certainly feel the difference of the weight in your wallet. If we think about the ACA subsidies expiring, you're talking about $2,700 per member of a family per year.
Yep.
So what's the impact of that, right? When you think about that on a kind of logical sense, that means that there are going to be folks who have to make a decision about whether they're going to make a car payment,
Right.
whether they're going to get educational tutoring for their kids, whether they're going to take that vacation, whether they're going to be able to provide a little extra food for their family.
Mm-hmm.
These are real issues. These are not policy discussions. These are people. These are real people that are going to be navigating harder choices because government is failing to act.
Mm-hmm.
And when you look at this big dastardly bill that was passed over the summer, you look at some of the greatest unfunded liabilities in the
That's
history of this country. And so fiscal responsibility has been thrown to the wind.
Mm-hmm.
We're enriching the billionaires at a
Yep.
pace that's unprecedented. And we find ourselves in the middle of this calcified Gilded Age. And no one wants that.
Nope.
And no one succeeds, and no one believes that ladder is pointed anywhere but towards the ground. And that's an issue. And so we need to start thinking about how we actually deliver. It starts with things like SALT that have been top of mind for this state.
Yep.
We outperform, we outprovide. We need to also make sure that we have the opportunity to balance the tables for our people. The Gateway Tunnel.
Yep.
They've got to stop playing punitive politics with an engine for growth, not
Yep.
just for this region, but for this
The
whole
entire
country.
Yep.
If you can enable a project like that, you can get funding appropriated and secure it and maintain it and deploy it. You can provide outcomes that ultimately benefit this whole country. Then when we move to things like healthcare, like we just talked about, we talk about energy, there are ways where we need to move with a sense of purpose and a sense of urgency. And, I think one of the things that's been challenging watching the National Democratic Party is that sense of urgency sometimes feels, leaves people wanting,
Right.
right? I mean, even when you think about, the tremendous progress that was made during the Biden administration, well, it only counts in the end game.
That's
And
right.
the end game is you got to get the capital out the door in order to support working families, to provide those good paying jobs, and to provide real opportunities for those communities to grow. And so I obviously applaud what was done with CHIPS and Science and some of these other pieces of legislation like the Inflation Reduction Act. I'm an absolute steadfast believer in green energy. We need to think bolder. We need to think bigger. The American people deserve a bigger, better deal, full stop. And so I think the way I see it is we've got to be able to provide results there. And that all comes down to thinking about that with a bias for action and making sure that we're executing that good plan today rather than a perfect plan tomorrow.
Very good.
When did you decide that you wanted to actually run for this seat? Now, it's a very crowded field right now. You have a sitting lieutenant governor, a former congressman, 5 county and local elected officials. You're a newcomer. But it's open now because there's so much. But was this something you decided months ago, a year ago? If she won, if she lost? I'm just curious about how one makes a decision like that.
Well, I'll tell you, the first thing, I always knew politics was going to be a bit of a dogfight. I don't know that anybody really told me it'd be such a dog pile.
Right.
Yes.
Which has
Exactly
been
what it is now.
which has
Yeah.
been a little bit interesting. But listen, I think that's a great thing for the voters. Fundamentally,
It
the
is.
voters deserve a choice. And at the end of the day, we've got great Americans, great New Jerseyans who are in this race, and it's an honor to be alongside them trying to earn that trust and confidence of the voters. I mean that truly. How do you make a decision to do this? Well, first of all, you got to think about, am I approaching this in a way that is actually results oriented for the people that I care about and love? And that's my family. That's the families that are my friends. That's the families that are my neighbors. And I grew up here. And so I see that as every single person across this district. I have friends from every corner of this district. And, I think for me, I started a lot of the conversations over the last year with, what do you want out of a member of Congress? What are the problems that are keeping you up at night? What's your challenge that you see with government today? And I think as you hear that, you start to draw threads and you start to think about, well, what are the pieces that you need to move towards a solution there? How do you continue to deliver that radical competence that Governor-elect Sherrill started, that the grassroots was able to support? How do you continue to deliver on that? And to me, it really comes down to, as we look at 2026 and we look at what the American people have voted on really repeatedly over the last couple of years, that they want new paths, they want new voices, and they want new ideas. And so there's an opportunity here for transition to a new set of public servants who can think both informed by their experience in a different generation, but guided by the best practices of other generations to draw those pieces together to drive real results, to stamp out this hateful, punitive rhetoric and this politics of past. We need to think about the future. We need to realize that we are our own best hope and that it's our work and our teamwork that will ultimately draw this forward to be a community that has the results, that has the solutions, and that has the forum for us to discuss, debate, and deliver what is needed in order to live big, fulfilling lives that everyone deserves to have an opportunity to prosper in.
That's great. That's great.
So, Ian, I know we talked about this on some of our prior podcasts, but I know it's been changing. So, what's happening now? So there's going to be a primary when is the primary going to be?
The primary is going to be, go ahead, you tell them, Zach.
72 days, but who's counting? February 5th.
Right. So we have a and then
and then there'll be a general election in April.
April
16th.
Okay, and
There's one Republican that's declared.
there's one Republican
From my hometown, actually, Randolph.
Oh, is it?
Yeah.
Do you know the guy? Or
I don't.
Okay.
But actually, the funny part, too,
So Randolph
is
is in the 11th district as well, then. right?
It is.
Oh, okay.
It is.
So your parents can be able to vote for you.
It is.
Oh, very cool. And you're living in
we're
Morristown
excited.
right now, though, right?
We live just 10 minutes down the road.
Gotcha, okay.
My wife would tell you that was a very important characteristic. And,
sure,
childcare
I'm
is,
sure.
you don't realize quite how much of a priority that is until you're like,
Right. You're like, how
biggest
much is
priority there is.
How
Until
much is
you're-
this going to cost? I better be nice to my mother-in-law.
until you're juggling and, we're celebrating my dad's retirement and we're like, hey, Dad, congratulations. We're so thrilled for you. We have the perfect job lined up
There
for
you
you.
go.
Since you're going to be
Can you
around
say
more
like 2
often.
days a week.
Yeah. Yes. So okay, so you sat with your wife, you sat with your parents, you sat with your friends, and you said, I think I want to do this. Any detractors? Anybody give you food for thought and saying, well, maybe no, this is crazy, or is the support just been, it's been unanimous in support for you?
I mean, I think that there's a conversation right now broadly across the whole country around how do we make politics something that's focused on progress?
Right.
And I think, the detractors would feel that dynamic of being sick and
That's
tired
right.
and sick and tired, right? Like,
Yeah.
to me, the detractors are the folks who would say, hey, this is an insider game. You should
Yep.
sit it out. Hey, you should sit and wait your turn. Hey, politics isn't going to change anything. And, I just refuse to believe that in this day and age, with all the information at our fingertips, with what the
very
voters
important.
have indicated, they want choice.
Yep.
They want an informed discussion. They want to be treated like adults, and they want to have an opportunity to interpret what they think can ultimately be the solution that they want to
Right.
represent them and deliver for them. So, I think one of the things you always think about in this game of decisions, right, is how do you plot a path in which you can advocate and you can deliver? And, in the advocating side, you got to be able to ask the right questions. You got to be able to understand what's keeping people up at night.
Mm-hmm.
One of my proudest moments, I think, as we kind of consider this was I remember I was talking to somebody in the district who's a local leader that you might know. And they said, this is the first time I've had a candidate talk to me for 30 minutes without trying to basically run down on their bio before I've had
Right.
a chance to answer my questions.
That's great.
And I think it just speaks to, I think, where people want politics to go. They want it to be about the people. And
Right.
that's what this forum is supposed to be for. And so, sure, there are detractors. There's always detractors. And I think having an informed discussion and weighing the pros, cons is part of anything. But I think at the end of the day, we believe that we could deliver an extraordinarily strong choice.
Mm-hmm.
I fundamentally believe that I can be the representative that can bring those new ideas and those new paths forward. And as we had an opportunity to tell that story and build that confidence, we've gotten great confidence from across the district, and we believe we'll continue to get it.
I really like how you talk about the importance of listening to the people that you're talking to, right? Because as in my professional career, listening is where you really find the way to find solutions to resolve the problems. And we know that you're a problem solver, but also, and this is a little bit touchy-feely for Lee, I always say the greatest gift that you can give anybody is to let them know that they have been listened to, that they've been heard, right? And you're doing both of those things with your listening, I guess, tour, if you will, like speaking to people in your district, finding out what's important to them, what they want their local elected officials to do.
Now, were you talking to me just now? Because I wasn't.
What? Huh?
I
What?
wasn't paying attention.
Hum.
That's right.
I'm sorry, Ian, come again?
That's right. Yes.
Can you say that again? Were you talking? Yeah.
but
that was you talking.
Yes.
Yeah.
But I think it's so important to emphasize that point, right? I think so much of this is that the American people don't feel heard.
Right.
And I don't think New Jerseyans feel heard.
Yeah.
And I think they feel that the government is almost untethered from their day-to-day reality.
Yeah.
And, I talk a lot about accountability when we go talk to folks across the district. And the first piece of that accountability is that we need to meet Trump, and we need to challenge Trump, and we need to challenge this MAGA ideology at every single turn. And we need to do it with spirit. We need to do it with the right amount of aggressiveness, and we need to do it with strength.
Yeah.
Because they need to know that there are Americans who fundamentally reject that ideology. The other accountability I think about is that, coming back to this speed of battle, speed of need, the way that you build confidence is through competence.
Mm-hmm.
That means that government needs to deliver at the speed of need of its people.
Right.
If I were to pay for Netflix and it only worked 3 out of the 7 nights that I paid for it, right? I'm on a monthly subscription. Maybe it's going to work. Maybe it's not going to work. There's no new content. I give feedback. I don't get anything what I want.
Yep.
I wouldn't pay for that service
That's
anymore.
right.
And I think the American people deserve to demand a service that meets their needs at the speed at which those needs come up.
Yep.
And so whether that's transportation, whether that's healthcare, whether it's education, Trump has obviously shown that that is not a concern for him. He's got
Right,
his
at
hand in
all.
your pocket. He's trying to sit in the doctor's office with you. He's trying to tell you what to do with your body, who you can love, who you can be, and where
Yep.
you can be. And I think that that's fundamentally wrong.
Mhm.
And I think the best thing that we can do is safeguard the Americans' ability to choose
Mhm.
and provide for themselves
As
and be in their corner.
Yeah.
Sorry.
As an Army Ranger, now, if you had told me years ago that a guy who worked on the same television show I worked on would be the secretary of what do we even call Pete Hegseth? The Secretary of War, right?
Well, it's the War Department.
He's a War
now.
Department. Right? So,
right?
what are your thoughts on first off the War Department, the name? And again, you're a military guy. I think if anyone has a right to state their thoughts on this, and perhaps
And I'm going to compound that question
Yeah.
with, so we are sitting here. This may not come out for another day or two, but today is Tuesday. When we see what has happened in recent days with the president basically saying that former military members of Congress have committed sedition and perhaps need to be hung.
yeah.
Right.
Yeah,
I mean,
yeah.
let's hear a little bit about your thoughts about that as well.
Yeah.
Being an active service member and having served the country.
Some war hero. I mean,
Right.
you have a right to have an opinion on this if anyone does.
Well, for me, I mean, I've had the privilege of serving alongside real heroes, and I think for me, the privilege has always just been that aspect of service. What I would say about this is, I cannot begin enough to more strongly and vehemently reject, refuse, and
Yep.
absolutely admonish anyone who would claim that having honest conversations about what the direction of this country is seditious, a traitor, or anything other than a patriot.
Yep.
I come back to James Baldwin, who said, "Of course I love my country more than any other. That's why I insist on criticizing her. Because we can always make her better, because we owe a promissory note both to this generation and the next
Yep.
that we can drive a better outcome."
Yep.
And the idea that disagreement is betrayal, disagreement is dastardly, is abhorrent, and it goes against every American value.
Yep.
And I think what's more concerning, and saying this as a private citizen, but also one steeped in military experience, in particular, Secretary Hegseth's comments around Senator Kelly are the most deeply concerning, because it's we have seen time and time again a willingness to weaponize arms of the government in order to confront and chill civil conversation
Right.
around the direction of this country. And when Americans are afraid to speak their mind,
Mm-hmm.
you're eating at the very bedrock principle of what this nation was founded upon, that you have an opportunity and you have the freedom and the right, the God-given right, to speak your mind. And that, to me, is the most horrific aspect of all this.
Yep. It's horrible.
Well, Zach Beecher, you were running for Congress, and you were running for the 11th District to be in a very crowded field. But I got to tell you
That's it.
something. I'm walking away from this really impressed with we just met
Yes,
today.
me
And
too.
I mean, I'm so proud of this country when guys like this step up to the
Me
plate.
too. It's
And
great for all of us.
Yeah, it makes me feel good. You're 34, I think we talked.
That's right.
You're 30. What were you doing at 34, Ian? You weren't running for office at 34.
No,
Yeah,
I wasn't running for office. I was still living like I was maybe 18 or 19.
I think you guys were blazing your own trail
Maybe,
here. Give
maybe.
yourself a
We
little
were
credit.
blazing a different trail.
I was
Yes,
going to my
yes.
100th Dead show or something like that, probably. Yeah, that's what I was doing. Accomplishing so much with, But anyway, we can't thank you enough, Zach, for coming in.
Yes, thank you, Zach.
This is-
And Zach and I have been trying to connect for the last week, and so I'm very glad that we got him in here today, and we got to meet and talk some more. So thank you.
Now, this has been exciting, guys. And I always appreciate the opportunity to tell the story, have a chance to just have a conversation
Yep.
around what are the
Very
challenges
important.
front of mind. And I'm looking forward to staying in touch. This has been amazing.
Very good. That
right.
sounds great.
All right, so, ladies and gentlemen, Zach Beecher, He is running for office. It's a name that you should pay some attention to.
Find out some more about him.
Find out some more
Zach,
about
do you have a website that people can look at?
Please go to www.zachbeecher.com, ZachBeecher. We'd love to inform you a little bit more about what we're thinking, but a rabid focus on results,
Excellent.
not rhetoric, affordability, accountability.
Beautiful. Thank you.
ZachBeecher.com.
Yep.
Okay. All right. So, Ian, until we do it again.
Until we do it again.
All right. Good night, everybody. Thank
Good
you.
night. Thank you.